Hey, folks, it's your boy, the boss of economics, back to slice through the fog of financial nonsense and government mismanagement like a hot knife through overpriced butter. Today, we're diving headfirst into the latest economic dumpster fire, tariffs, inflation, and the Federal Reserve's classic game of, let's just wait and see while Rome burns. Buckle up, because this is gonna be a wild ride. Oh, look, everyone, Susan Collins, the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston president, has graced us with her crystal ball prediction: tariffs are inevitably going to juice up inflation, at least in the short term. And guess what? The Fed's response is the same old song and dance: keep interest rates steady, kick the can down the road, and pray the economy doesn't implode before the next election cycle. Sound familiar? It should, because this is the government's economic playbook, and it's been on repeat since the dawn of time. Now, for those of you new to the boss economics world, let me break this down in plain English before we go full-on nuclear on the policy clowns running the show. Tariffs, those delightful taxes on imported goods, are back in the spotlight, thanks to President Trump's latest round of America First trade policies. The idea? Slap a tax on foreign goods to protect American industries. The reality? Higher prices for everything, a ticked-off global trade system, and an inflation monster that's licking its chops. And who's left holding the bag? You guessed it, us, the everyday folks trying to afford groceries, gas, and that overpriced avocado toast. But wait, there's more. Collins isn't just worried about a little short-term price bump. Oh no, she's hinting that this inflation spike might stick around like an unwanted houseguest. Meanwhile, Fed Chair Jerome Powell is out here playing the eternal optimist, saying, oh, don't worry, it'll all blow over. But hold up, St. Louis Fed President Alberto Musalem is throwing shade, warning that assuming this inflation is temporary is a dangerous game. And folks, when the Fed starts arguing with itself, you know we're in for a clown show of epic proportions. So, grab your popcorn, because today on Boss Economics World, we're dissecting this mess from point to surface, starting with the root of the problem, zooming out to the systemic failures, and roasting the government's role in dragging us into this economic quagmire. And don't worry, I've got the latest data, the spiciest examples, and a whole lot of truth bombs to drop. Let's get into it. Let's start with the obvious: tariffs are a tax, and taxes don't make things cheaper. Period. When you slap a 25% tariff on imported steel, or a 10% tariff on Chinese electronics, guess who pays? Not China, not Mexico, you do. Companies importing these goods pass the cost straight to consumers, and boom, your grocery bill, your car payment, and your new iPhone price tag all go up faster than a SpaceX rocket. Now, Susan Collins is out here saying the inflation spike is inevitable. Gee, Susan, thanks for the heads up, but where were you when this policy was being cooked up? Oh, right, sitting on the sidelines while the government played economic roulette with our wallets. And let's not forget, this isn't the first time tariffs have backfired. Remember Trump's 2018 trade war with China? According to a 2023 study by the National Bureau of Economic Research, NBR, those tariffs cost American consumers and businesses $40 billion a year in higher prices. And did they save American jobs? Nope. The same study found that U.S. employment in tariff-protected industries barely budged, while retaliatory tariffs from China crushed American farmers, costing them $27 billion in lost exports. Fast forward to 2025, and we're back at it, folks. The U.S. Trade Representative's office just reported that Trump's latest tariff proposals, set to hit in Q2 2025, could slap a 20% tax on $500 billion worth of imports. That's a cool $100 billion in extra costs, and guess who's footing the bill? Not the billionaires hiding in their tax havens, us, the schlubs trying to survive paycheck to paycheck. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room: inflation. Thanks to these tariffs, we're staring down the barrel of another price surge, and the Fed is acting like a deer in headlights. Collins says the inflation bump might be short-lived, but then hedges her bets, warning it could be more persistent. Gee, Susan, way to cover all your bases. Meanwhile, the University of Michigan's gauge of long-term inflation expectations just hit its highest level in over 3 decades. That's right, folks, consumers are now expecting prices to keep climbing for the next 5 to 10 years. And when expectations get unmoored like that, inflation becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But here's the kicker: this isn't just about tariffs. Oh no, this is the cherry on top of a government mismanagement sundae. Let's rewind to 2020 to 2022, when the Fed and the Treasury decided to flood the economy with $6 trillion in stimulus cash to save us from the pandemic. Noble idea, terrible execution. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, consumer prices have already risen 20% since January 2020, and real wages, your actual purchasing power, have flatlined. And now, with tariffs adding fuel to the fire, the Congressional Budget Office, CBO, projects inflation could hit 4.5% by the end of 2025, up from their earlier estimate of 3.1%. That's not transitory, folks, that's a full-blown crisis. And don't even get me started on the supply chain. Tariffs don't just raise prices, they disrupt global trade flows, creating bottlenecks that make the 2021 chip shortage look like a walk in the park. Just last month, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, warned that a new round of U.S. tariffs could shave 1.3% off global GDP by 2026. But hey, who needs economic growth when you've got America First bumper stickers, right? Now, let's zoom out to the Fed, because oh boy, do they deserve a roasting. Susan Collins says it's likely appropriate to keep interest rates steady for longer. Translation: we have no idea what to do, so let's just do nothing and hope for the best. Meanwhile, the Fed's latest projections show they've slashed their 2025 GDP growth forecast to 1.8%, down from 2.4%, and bumped up their inflation estimate to 3.8%. Oh, and unemployment. They now expect it to hit 4.6% by year-end, up from 4.2%. But don't worry, folks, Jerome Powell says the economy is strong and the labor market is solid. Sure, Jerry, and I'm the Queen of England. Here's the problem, the Fed is stuck between a rock and a hard place, and it's their own darn fault. They kept interest rates at near zero for too long, fueling asset bubbles in stocks, housing, and crypto. Then, when inflation started raging in 2022, they slammed on the brakes with the fastest rate hikes in 40 years, nearly tipping us into a recession. And now, with tariffs threatening to reignite inflation, they're paralyzed, afraid to raise rates and choke the economy, but equally terrified to cut rates and let inflation spiral out of control. But let's call a spade, this isn't just Fed incompetence, it's government collusion. The Fed's supposed to be independent, but they're bending over backwards to accommodate Trump's trade war 2.0. Remember 2018, when Trump publicly bullied Powell into pausing rate hikes? Or 2024, when the Fed delayed rate cuts until after the election to avoid ruffling political feathers? This isn't monetary policy, folks, this is political theater, and we're the ones paying for the tickets. And now, the grand finale, the government's starring role in this economic horror show. Let's be real, tariffs aren't about protecting American jobs, they're about political points. Trump's trade policies are a masterclass in short-term populism with long-term pain. According to a 2024 report by the Peterson Institute for International Economics, U.S. tariffs since 2018 have cost American consumers $136 billion and reduced GDP growth by 0.2% per year. And for what? A few photo ops with steelworkers and a handful of swing state votes. But it's not just Trump, the Biden administration laid the groundwork for this mess, too. Remember the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan in 2021? Economists like Larry Summers warned it would overheat the economy, but Biden plowed ahead, desperate for a political win. And don't forget the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which poured $1.2 trillion into the economy without addressing supply-side bottlenecks, further stoking inflation. Both parties are complicit in this game of economic whack-a-mole, where every solution creates three new problems. And let's not ignore the elephant in the room, retaliatory tariffs. China, the EU, and Canada are already gearing up to hit back, just like they did in 2018. According to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, retaliatory tariffs could cost American exporters $75 billion annually, hammering farmers, manufacturers, and small businesses. But hey, who cares about collateral damage when you've got a trade war to win, right? So, here's the deal, folks, tariffs are about to jack up inflation, the Fed's too scared to do anything about it, and the government's too busy playing politics to care. This isn't just an economic problem, it's a systemic failure, a masterclass in mismanagement, and a middle finger to every hardworking American trying to make ends meet. But don't take my word for it, look at the data. Look at the $136 billion in tariff costs, the 20% price surge since 2020, the 4.5% inflation forecast, and the 1.3% global GDP hit. Look at the University of Michigan's inflation expectations, the Fed's slashed growth forecasts, and the CBO's dire warnings. This isn't a short-lived blip, this is a slow-motion train wreck, and we're all on board. So, what's the solution? Well, if I were running the show, I'd start by scrapping these tariffs and focusing on real economic growth, investing in education, fixing supply chains, and cutting red tape for small businesses. I'd tell the Fed to grow a spine, stop pandering to politicians, and get serious about inflation. And I'd remind the government that their job is to serve us, not their own re-election campaigns. But hey, I'm just a guy with a YouTube channel and a knack for calling out BS. So, what do you think, folks? Are you ready to hold these clowns accountable, or are we just gonna sit back and watch the economy burn? Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like button if you're as fed up as I am, and subscribe for more truth bombs every week. This is Boss Economics World, signing off, because someone's gotta tell it like it is.